Use News Now Sports as your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks, sponsored by University of Iowa Healthcare.
There's a chain of command to everything, and I respect that. And, we move forward.
An unprecedented week in Hawkeye athletics with the bombshell news in mind. Nobody we'd rather have in the studio than the guy behind home plate of the World Series. But since he wasn't available, our next best option was David Eickholt, Hawkeye Insider for 24/7 Sports. David, appreciate having you with us again
I appreciate
today.
you having me back, man.
David, you're the guy who broke the news on Monday. The NBA has Woj bombs. I think that you dropped an Ike bomb. When did you first start hearing rumors that Brian might be on his way out?
Yeah, so I started hearing the rumors, first of all, Saturday night. Just at least a little rumblings, rumors here or there. But, of course, you have to be able to separate some of that information, what's actually has traction to it. And then around Sunday morning, the talks really started to heat up. And then probably about 4:30 on Sunday, I got final confirmation that Brian Ferentz was out as Iowa's offensive coordinator. But again, you still want to triple, quadruple check your sources, wait a little bit to see if anything changes. But yeah, I think this is a long time coming. I think we kind of knew Brian was going to be on his way out. But to do it in this part of the season, I think is why people are a little bit confused about what's going on right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of big questions I'm wanting to pick your brain about specifically. But one is what you just mentioned. Why make this announcement now with 4 games left in the regular season and not at the conclusion of the season?
Yeah, I think, the reality is Kirk loves to kind of do his full evaluation after the season. That's not where college football is heading right now. You think about the NCAA transfer portal. It opens up December 4th. That only goes on for 30 days. They reduced the time frame from 45 to 30. And Iowa right now, I still think, with all the attrition across college football, you kind of want to keep your best players at Iowa. And I'm not speculating any individual players, but just to know the offense is not going to be the same next season. And also, you got to make Iowa look as sexy as possible to some people through the portal.
Well, when it comes to specifics and how Kirk feels about his son being out after the season, we didn't learn much when the head Hawkeye talked to the media on Tuesday, but it is clear the decision to announce a change in the coaching staff mid-season was not his.
For 25 years, tried to operate with a singular focus of doing what I feel is best for the program, and that's mainly the players and everybody that works in this building. That's my first obligation. And basically, my philosophy, my practice, I think has been pretty consistent. Typically, we go through the season and then run an evaluation of the program, top to bottom, afterwards. And, yesterday's announcement, certainly a departure from that practice, but that's really what we've tried to do for the past 24 years.
Now, David, based on the way that Kirk spoke about this decision, I don't think you and I are alone in assuming that he was not happy about the way this was handled. Any doubt in your mind about that, or would you have read him any differently in his press conference?
No, I think he was hurt.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he is a father in this situation as well. And, of course, he doesn't like acknowledging that Brian's his son, but Brian doesn't like acknowledging that the head coach is his father. Every time he refers to Kirk, he says the head coach. He doesn't say dad. He doesn't say father, or even Kirk. So I think that Kirk's hurt by the way things have happened. And I also think he's just frustrated that it came out, again, in midseason, but with the way everything's sort of trending and moving, it's the only way that Iowa is going to be able to move forward to make these big changes. Because think about it, it's not going to get easier. UCLA, USC, Washington, Oregon, those are 4 really good offenses.
Does this throw a wrench into any future working relationship that Kirk and Beth might have moving forward?
I asked Kirk about that, and he just said there's a chain of command, and I respect that. And I think Kirk has earned everything being Iowa's head coach. He's going to get a statue outside Kinnick Stadium one day. Well-deserved, and I'm not taking anything away from his accomplishments. But I also think there was a little bit of frustration from Kirk. This is the first real time I think Kirk Ferentz has power checked, at least in the past 10 years. And I'm not saying he doesn't respect the chain of command. I also just think it kind of threw him off. So going forward, I don't think it's going to really be the make or break decision if Kirk Ferentz comes back next year, because he likes to evaluate things at the end of the year because he does not like to make moves in the heat of the moment. So that's why I'm trying not to read too much into what everything happened yesterday.
Yeah, well, a lot of vocal Hawkeye fans on social media already applauding the still interim AD Beth Goetz for making this decision. We also got to ask her some questions following Kirk's press conference this week. Goetz must have been channeling some of her old coaching abilities because much like Kirk, she was dodging any potential hot button answers, including when she was asked if this decision had anything to do with pressure from the Hawkeye fan base.
You're in these situations, you tune out what's around. It's our job to evaluate all the information we have. You make the best decision you can at the time for both the short and long term of a program, of the institution, and then that's what you go with.
If there's anything that people do like to criticize about this decision, it's just the timing. The Hawkeyes still have a shot at the Big Ten West title. Hard to imagine this won't be something of a distraction for the players moving forward this season.
I think so, but I also think this could be a tool that ends up rallying the guys.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it, and maybe even Brian Ferentz, because I think this is an opportunity for Brian Ferentz to kind of have the pressure, I don't want to say alleviate off him, but he can have some fun with it. He can go all against the wall, throw everything, see what sticks. Cooper DeJean and Wildcat maybe if they get a couple cornerbacks back.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think right now, I know people are frustrated by the timing of it. And I also think the timing of it is why they didn't fire Brian Ferentz immediately. Because if you don't have a good backup plan in place to the final 4 games and you're in contention, that's when I would have said it's the wrong move. But the fact that he's going to remain on staff and there's at least clarity for the short-term future. Again, I'm not saying the way Beth Getz and Iowa handled it is perfect, but there was a lot of upside, quote unquote, to make that happen.
Well, looking big picture right now, Kirk Ferentz is in the midst of his 25th season as a Hawkeyes head coach, but will he be around for a 26th? Here's his brief answer when asked that very question this week.
My plans are like they always are, to worry about this game and bigger scale, bigger picture for these 4 games. And that's where my focus has been this entire season. Obviously, it's more than 4 games a week ago or 2 weeks ago. That's what I think about. And that's each and every year. It's been pretty consistent, just like the other things I referenced.
Well, David, real simple question here. Is this the year that is the end of the Kirk Ferentz era at Iowa?
I think it's really tough to say. I am a little bit more, you know, not want to say optimistic, but I think there's a higher chance now that he could be done at the end of the year. But I also want to say, again, the way he kind of talks about evaluating things at the end of the year, I really think he's going to do that when it comes to his head coaching career. Because I remember, I think it was last year, when it seems like every year we speculate whether or not Kirk's coming back. We ask him, you know, are you coming back for another season? And Kirk just said, I'm more of on a 5-year plan than a year-by-year plan. Of course, that's when Brian Ferentz was still be the offensive coordinator. So I don't want to give an exact percentage. I thought heading into the year it was maybe a 5% chance. I mean, maybe I up it to 10 to 15%. But I think right now, based on initial conversations behind the scenes, there's really not much worry that Kirk's going to be back. But again, I want to see how this kind of sits with them over the next couple of months of, hey, my son's not going to be the offensive coordinator anymore.
Got plenty of experience with losing. I'm an expert to get my ass kicked. But that's one thing I am an expert in. But you get back on your feet and you move forward.
Speaking of sassy Kirk, well, let's hope that's not what's in store for Wrigley Field this weekend. Coming up, we talk football, if you can believe it. Deacon Hill is still QB1 despite major struggles. We'll talk about how short his leash may be for the final 4 games of the regular season.
We've looked at every position, let everybody compete and let everybody practice. And again, the older guys, the guys that are more experienced, didn't get a lot of work. They got some work last week, but not to the extent of a normal, normal practice week, I would say. But yeah, as we sit right now at the quarterback position, it's a clear 1, 2, 3, and we'll keep an open mind as we move forward.
David Eickholt back with us on Eye on the Hawks. You heard it from Kirk. Deacon Hill still the clear #1 quarterback. Now, Kirk preaches about ball security, but Hill, he had 3 turnovers in a 2-point loss to Minnesota. Do you believe that Deacon Hill is still the starter at the end of the regular season?
Yeah, that's a loaded question because I think we thought the same thing about, Spencer Petras and what happened last year before the injury, the Ohio State game, and right when Alex Padilla got in there, I think he had 2 turnovers in the first 3 snaps. So that might be where Kirk Ferentz is at right now. And look, Deacon Hill, he's an older guy, but at the same time, for Joe Labas, he's in a very interesting spot because keep in mind, he went 14-24 in that bowl game win against Kentucky. He has started, he has won, he's been in the program for a couple of years. And, if I'm Joe Labas right now, I'm thinking, am I ever going to get a real opportunity? Because Cade McNamara is coming back next year. Deacon Hill's coming back next year. So I think, for Joe Labas, I think it's a little bit disheartening to hear that he's a clear 2. But at the same time, I've also been a believer if you're a quarterback, you have to take some of those slights as motivation to prove that you can be the capable leader of said team. So I think people still believe in Deacon Hill, but as far as teammates go, but Deacon Hill has to take better care of the football, keep the football up high, stop getting stripped when he's down in that pocket. And at the end of the day, he has to be able to make throws that Division I quarterbacks need to be able to make on a consistent basis.
Well, the one topic that Hawkeye fans crave more than any, it's Tory Taylor. The man continues to astound the nation with what he delivers as a punter, nearing some impressive marks in the Iowa record book, and even in frigid weather far from his home in Australia, he's coming through in ways that impress his head coach.
I was teasing Tory this morning out there. It was a little brisk, a little windy, and he was booming the ball. And I said, 4 years ago, there's no way you could have done this. And he just joked. He said, I'd never punted an American football until 4 years ago. So Torrey's an outstanding player, just an outstanding player, having a great season. But he's worked extremely hard for it, and that's usually the story behind the story.
I don't really need to ask, David. I'm sure everyone within state lines believe that that man is the best punter in America, but he seems to draw fans even outside of just his skills on the field. What is it about Tory Taylor that makes him the most popular player on the Iowa roster?
I mean, the accent's got to help, right?
It's got to help.
But I also think Tory Taylor, just his whole background story, I mean, keep in mind he's 26 years old, coming from Australia, hadn't exactly punted American football, as you said. I think the first time you saw an American football stadium in person was his first career game during the COVID year when they went to Purdue.
Wow.
And I think Tory Taylor, and I also think that's what's really helped elevate him, is the Iowa genuine love for their punter and what he's been able to do. And by the way, if he's not the best punter in America, cancel the Ray Guy Award. Because you can be the SEC guy, 78 degrees, no wind, and they still can't do what Tory Taylor can do. He can do it through rain, sleet, snow. He can do it in the shine. And he's been, I'm not kidding you, he is probably the MVP of this Iowa football team this year. Maybe Sebastian Castro has the case. Cooper DeJean, of course, has the case. Jay Higgins, over 100 tackles. But Tory Taylor, I think, for what he brings to the table, Iowa, part of the reason why they've been able to get away with the offensive ineptitude is because Tory Taylor has been so perfect as the punter.
It's very rare to see a punter get drafted by the NFL. Do you think that Tory gets drafted in next year's NFL draft?
That's the crazy part. I really don't know, because I think if he was 23, maybe. Yeah. But I also think if you're an NFL team, you look at Tory Taylor, you just sit there and think, we're going to get at least 5 to 6 great years out of him. And I think that's ability to be able to flip the field like that. And think about how many NFL stadiums are played in good weather climates and even in domes. So if you think Tory Taylor is effective now, I really think he could be an all-pro caliber punter by year 1 or year 2 in the NFL. He's probably the best punter I've seen in my lifetime, at least.
I've only had one experience, I think, playing in a baseball stadium, and that was unique. First-class treatment, but the field was not great.
That one experience came after the 2017 season at Yankee Stadium. Another historic baseball franchise hosts the Hawkeyes on Saturday as Iowa heads to Wrigley. Look ahead at Northwestern next on Eye on the Hawks. Well, this weekend it'll only be the third college football game at Wrigley Field since 1938. Northwestern played and lost in the only 2 contests, first in 2010 against Illinois when they only could use one end zone the entire game. They've made some changes since then, and the field has 2 working end zones. Imagine that. Purdue beat them in 2021. Iowa's played on a baseball field under Kirk Ferentz, the 2017 Pinstripe Bowl win over Boston College, and he knows some challenges his team will have to conquer at the friendly confines.
There's some challenges with this. Playing on the same sideline is really a unique challenge. Baseball locker room, single file, up and down steps, all things like that. I teased Ron Snodgrass, who's the official, who's an outstanding official and a really good person. I thought he must have just, really pissed somebody off to get this being, because trying to manage the clock in this situation is going to be a real challenge. It's interesting, but it's like anything else. We're going to make it go. Be a thrill.
David Eickholt back with us on Eye on the Hawks. Maybe the biggest shame of all the Brian Ferentz news is that we're not able to focus on something that's going to be a really fun spectacle at Wrigley Field. We just had a women's basketball game on a football field. Now we have a football game on a baseball field. Have you done much research on what the setup is going to be on Saturday?
I've looked at a little bit of it. I'm disappointed to hear they have 2 end zones, because you think about how would you record a pick 6, right? With Cooper DeJean picks it off. Is it like recess back in 3rd grade where you have to go run and touch the wall and then run all the way back and dodge everybody again? But the one sideline will be interesting, and Kirk's right. I mean, it's going to be really frustrating for the officials. I think people are going to have to be patient with the way the clock works, with the way the media timeouts are going to work. And I did find it funny that he complimented the officiating yesterday and who's coming in, because you think about what happened last time Iowa played a football game with the official.
Well, Northwestern is a very different team than what we expected out of them this year, with a lot of offseason controversy. Their over-under win total was 3. They've already got 4, and amazingly are not out of the chase for a Big Ten West title. Curtis Fader shows us why Hawkeye fans should not just expect a win this Saturday.
Northwestern can be best described as hot and cold. Wildcats have alternated wins and losses all year, and For the record, they won last week if that gives any additional hope for Hawkeye fans. In terms of additional causes for concern, it is all dependent upon the play of Northwestern's quarterback. The Wildcats have rallied around number 6, and taking away the head of the snake will be key for this Iowa defense. But the good news is that task is quite doable. Sullivan, on average, has gotten sacked over 5 times per game the last 3 games. If Iowa can capitalize on putting good pressure on him, it could be a pretty long night for the purple and white. The betting over-under for total points on Iowa versus Northwestern is 29.5, the lowest on a college football game ever. To put that in perspective, a 17-13 game would qualify as over. In theory, putting money on the over would be a slam dunk, but would you bet on it?
David, last time you were in here, you made some comments about Utah State that apparently went around the Aggies locker room. Do you have any Northwestern hot takes that you would like to go viral today?
Usually I'm not one to shy away from a hot take, but I think you need to respect what David Braun's has done with them. I mean, with all of the offseason controversy, with the quarterback change, with how laughable they looked at the beginning of the year, fresh off a big win, they're playing impressive football. Brendan Sullivan's been really, really good, and had Iowa somehow lost to Utah State, I think that would have been a career-defining highlight for me, and that would have circulated 10 to 20 years from now,
I don't know if you'd be back with us in the studio today if that
Probably
not.
not.
Well, after the break, we'll bid farewell to David, give him a chance to make some plugs and some picks. That's next up as we wrap up Eye on the Hawks. A lot of talk this episode about Brian Ferentz and the putrid offense and where the program moves into the future of a new Big Ten, but there's still a 2023 football season and a potential 6 games left if Iowa can make it to Indy. David, they still are in the driver's seat, tied for first with 4 teams. If you're a betting man, as of today, do you think that Iowa wins the Big Ten West?
I do. I mean, I think all 4 games are winnable. I think all 4 games are losable. Yep. Rutgers has really impressed me this year based on their preseason expectations. Nebraska is so injury-riddled, but they play some really good defense, especially in the run game. But I think with Brian Ferentz, with the news of everything, I do think the team somehow rallies and they do make it to Indy. Yeah, I mean, these last 4 games are going to be tough for them. These are not pushovers, as is any game in the Big Ten West. You've had a chance to maybe pick up some subscribers this week. Any chance you want to tell the viewers at home where they can find you, where they can see your latest news? Yeah, go to HawkeyeInsider.com. We actually have a 60% off yearly special going on right now for the next couple of days. But stay ahead of the news. Don't be left behind. And just stay locked into Hawkeye Insider and at David Eickholt on Twitter, X. I mean, what are we calling it at this point? We're trying to go with X by now, but you can still call it whatever you want. I still search on Twitter. Well, let's get to our Big Ten, our Week 10 game picks. There's not a lot of intriguing matchups in the Big Ten, so we're shifting to the Big 12. Throwing David a curveball. Don't look now, but the Iowa State Cyclones have won 3 straight games and are in a 5-way tie for the first place in the Big 12. They host a ranked Kansas Jayhawk team that beat Oklahoma last week. Clones are 2.5-point favorites. David, who do you have in this one? I know this might shock some people based on some earlier comments I made in the year about Iowa State, but I'm picking Iowa State. They've really impressed me with the way they've bounced back. Rocco Beck looks like a very capable quarterback, and I think for all the Matt Campbell on the hot seat talk from that 1-week span, I think you need to tip your cap off to him. Yeah, I really like what Iowa State's doing right now, but I think that Kansas could come to town, and I like them beating Iowa State at Jack Trice. Another Big 12 battle. This one airs right here on Fox 28. Big noon kickoff. Also has conference title game implications. 23rd ranked K-State heading to Austin to take on number 7 Texas. Longhorns are 4-point favorites. What do you think, David? Yeah, Kansas State's been really weird this year. I mean, they've gotten blown out in a game they really shouldn't have. Then, of course, last week they put up 41 against Houston. Houston's not great, but I'm going with the Longhorns. I think they're really, really motivated. I wish Quinn Ewers was back, and I'd love to see some Arch Manning as well, but I have Texas in this one. Now to a football game on a baseball field with most likely featuring a baseball-like score. Iowa and Northwestern. The Hawkeyes are 5-point favorites. David, does Iowa win? And a bonus question, do the teams hit the over? Over-under total opened at 29.5, but now it's up to a whopping 31 points. I think Iowa, well, it was going to hit the over, Phil, so 29.5. I have Iowa winning 20-10. I think Deacon Hill throws a touchdown. I think Caleb Johnson breaks off a big run as well. And, we'll see if Cooper DeJean throws up a pick 6. But I have Iowa in this one. Well, that does it for Week 10 of Eye on the Hawks. Scan the QR code on the screen to download, subscribe, and listen to the Eye on the Hawks podcast. We've got a preview podcast up and also have an extended version of the show that you're watching right now, ready for download, available wherever you get your podcasts. Every week, we're going to be doing a live stream on YouTube reacting to the Iowa game. This week, we're on Sunday at noon. Join the stream or send along your questions. You can follow along at Iowa's News Now on YouTube. We'll send out the link from our Eye on the Hawks Twitter account.
We want to thank David Eickholt for coming in today. David, it's been a pleasure talking to you this season. Thanks for all the news that you continue to bring us throughout the year.
No, absolutely. It's always a pleasure being here with you.
You bet. All right, that's it for Eye on the Hawks. We'll see you next week.